All right, everyone. It is Friday, and you know what that means. It is time for manufacturing e-commerce success. And Kurt, what didn't we do? We don't have our banner up today. We'll put the banner on for now. Thanks, everyone, for being here. We are going to get going. We're going to be talking about positioning your product as a profit center. I am one of your hosts, Damon Pistolka, that lovely gentleman right over there. Birthday week, gentlemen. I'll just say that. Kurt Anderson, take it away, my friend.
Dude, just sit back, pretend we're not here because this is like the best guest of all time. I'm sorry if whoever, but anyway, drop us a note. Let us know that you're out there. Happy Friday, happy November, happy Friday, happy Halloween post, whatever. Right? Hope everybody recovered. Man, we've got the one, the only, the dynamo. We've got Sara Murray in the house. Sara,
so good.
How are you?
I'm so good. Happy birthday, Kurt.
Hey, thank you, man. That means a lot. I appreciate that. Oh, thank you, Sara. So, Sara, just out of curiosity, did you do anything for Halloween?
I did. I went out to my hometown, had a Main Street little gathering, and about 4 months ago, going through a box in my parents' garage, I found an old uniform.
A uniform?
From my Blockbuster days. So I found the uniform first, and then 4 hours later in a different box, I found my original name tag. I don't know if you can see it there. So I just wore my Blockbuster uniform as my costume.
So for Sara, for people under the age of, I'm going to guess 30, can you please describe what is Blockbuster? What are you talking about?
Gosh, Blockbuster was a magical place. It was a retail store with all sorts of different categories of movies you could watch. And then on Friday night, it was like a thing. You'd go with your friends, you'd go with your family, you'd go to the Blockbuster and you'd pick out a movie and you'd try to get your dad to buy you a $5 box of candy. And he would always say no, but it was a fun outing. It would take an hour to pick a movie.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Are you saying that there was a time on this planet that we couldn't watch a movie on our phone, or we actually had to physically leave our homes to watch a movie? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And this was, I think when I worked there, DVDs were coming around. So it was less VHS life and more DVDs, but I will tell you, Blockbuster was my second job. I worked at the country club during the summer, and then during the wintertime, I'd work at Blockbuster. And my very first day at Blockbuster, I have such a funny story, but it has nothing really to do with what we're talking about. But you guys are going to die. So my first day, I'm running a little bit late. I'm 16. It's snowing. And I get into my car, and I realize I'm out of gas. So I go to the gas station, and this was far enough back where you could start filling up your car before you paid. Yeah. So I threw in the pump, I run in to pay, and then I just hop back in my driver's seat and I drive away. And I hear this really loud crunch, but I thought I just drove over ice, and I'm on the highway and I see the nozzle and the full hose dragging up my car. So I had to call my mom first, and she's like, "Oh, I'll come meet you at the gas station." And then I called Blockbuster to say I was going to be late for my first day. And they said, "Why are you going to be late?" And I said, "Well, I was sort of in an accident." I didn't know how to say it because I was sort of in an accident by myself. So I have to go back with the shame of the nozzle and the hose back to the gas station. They were very nice. It just has a quick release. So they just connected it. And I show up at the Blockbuster 45 minutes late, and they said, "What happened?" So I told them the story. And my manager looks at me and says, "We will never drug test you here." 16 and frazzled and late to my first day. I'm like, what is going on? So it was a very funny first day. And I've learned a lot from, working at Blockbuster. And I do have a pivot into what we're going to talk about today. So we could pivot into professional chit chat if you want to get into it.
Hey, Damon, we've got a couple.
Yeah, we do. We do, because we got Jason says, well said. Bob Woods dropping the "Be Kind" rewind back in the VHS
words to live by.
Yeah. And Usman says, greetings from Usman today. Thanks, Sara. Mark Bregman. Hey, it would have taken so long to find a movie if you just took one of Sara's picks. I don't know what that means, but
They would have, so when you went into the movie store, Damon, they would actually, like, people that worked there, they would say, like, Sarah's favorite picks, and then she'd have her movies lined up. So Mark,
that's right. They did.
These are some
people that worked there.
Yeah.
So what were your picks, first of all, Sarah?
At mine would be like a lot of Leonardo DiCaprio movies.
Yep.
That was the age. What about you guys? What would your picks be in your Blockbuster life?
Oh, back Blockbuster, a lot of, The Godfather, right? Of course, Saving Private Ryan. Those were like my jams back then.
I have no shame. Mine would have been the dumb, funny ones.
Caddyshack,
Caddyshack, that back in that time. What was the other one?
Animal House.
Oh my goodness. Those have been the ones.
We're showing our age, Damon. Yeah. So Mark, that brought back some great memories.
Blues Brothers,
the
original. That was,
I feel like we also need to ask, like, what were your first jobs?
Oh, what was my first job, man? That's a great question. At 12 years old, I was a paper boy, not a very good one. Damon, how about you?
Well, growing up on a farm, I worked there first, but then when I had to go out and get a job, I worked at the local feed store, hucking feed bags all summer. Yeah, it's not fun. I want to tell you, when you get a 1-ton pickup and you can heap the thing up with 50-pound bags and do that 5 days a week, it's not fun.
Yeah. Not good for the back. So we got Blockbuster Video, newspapers. So anybody under 30 is like they're totally alienated by this conversation.
Don't know what we're doing.
Right?
Blockbuster was a pretty cush job, though. It was like you just got to put on whatever movie you wanted to watch and chat with your friends. It was a fun job. I enjoyed it, and it's it's sad that it went away because I think really we all know the reason why. They just didn't evolve with what the clients wanted, and so you think about Blockbuster and like at the time, it provided a place to gather and it was more of an experience. But then as we got busier and the phones came out and the internet came out, all of a sudden Redbox pops up. And now that's a little more convenient because you could reserve the movie ahead of time. Because what would suck is you'd get to Blockbuster and the movie you wanted was already gone. So that was one thing. The other thing, of course, is at the gas station, is at the grocery store. So you could do other errands. And then, of course, Netflix comes along and they switch it where instead of shopping the aisles, you're you're strolling your screen. And of course, then they're mailing the DVDs to us. Oh, and then they launch their original series and there's no commercials and we don't have to wait week over week. So they evolved with what the client wanted. And I think, it's a B2C lesson. But it really applies to what we're going to talk about today, too, because the way that we communicate our product or our service to our clients has to change and evolve to their lifestyle. So in a B2C environment, it's how are you going to make my life better or easier or more convenient? In a B2B environment, it's more around how are you going to make me money or how are you going to save them money? And so that's kind of the shift that I want to talk about on the show today.
Yeah, and a couple of things to unpack right there. So I'm a total geek on companies that go obsolete. So I couldn't love this conversation more. So I have an old blog post, where Blockbuster, Circuit City, Kodak. Think about Kodak. I live in upstate New York. Like Kodak. Again, showing my age, Damon. Like, did you ever think that we'd live long enough that Kodak was obsolete and didn't exist? Unfathomable. Jim Collins wrote the book Good to Great. In the book Good to Great is Circuit City is an example of a great company.
Yeah.
He came out with that book in like 2000, 2001. They were bankrupt, if I'm not mistaken, within 5 years.
Yeah.
And so the founder's son, who was, I think, if I'm not butchering this, came out with a book, Good to Great to Gone. And so, Sarah, I love this conversation. Let's just run with it. Talk about Blockbuster. And one thing before I stop, you talked about community. What Damon, we're constantly talking about like how businesses need to build community. That's what social does. That's what we're doing here. Sarah, that's how we came together, building that community. But, and Blockbuster it was like that community, Friday night, hey, see friends or get your movie or whatever it might be. But let's go there. Let's dive in on like how building that community is so important. But even though they built that community, they still became obsolete. Let's hear your thoughts there.
Because they didn't adapt to our lifestyle. I think that's really like the community is important, but it also has to adapt with our lifestyle, our changing lifestyle. And so another example, like I like to give the B2C ones because they're very, very literal, and then we can apply them to B2B land. Everyone knows Netflix. I brought props today, guys. Everyone knows Starbucks, right? So I want to ask you, when you think about Starbucks, what do you like about Starbucks? Because this is a company that's obviously not obsolete. It's not gone. It's really in our face all the time. Like, Damon, why do you like Starbucks?
You can find them anywhere in the world. And I know I can go in, even if I don't particularly like the coffee, I can have the same thing I'm going to have at home anywhere else.
It's
Good. Kurt, why do you like Starbucks?
Well, I'm going to speak for, so when you have a teenage daughter, I have a teenage daughter, and she, hey, we're going somewhere, and hey, we need to leave now. I'm like, well, we've got an extra 5 minutes, and no, because we're making a little detour. She's on her phone, booking her Starbucks. So, my daughter is a raving fan. It's easy. It's convenient. It's a little bit of a status. Damon, like you said, it's just so consistent,
Yeah. And I know if anyone wants to throw in the chat why they like Starbucks, but I think when I think about why I like Starbucks, I like that I can order it from the app, but it also has the GPS built in because you're usually driving around. So you don't want to be searching while you're driving. So it's built in there. If I don't have my wallet on me, I can pay with my phone. I can pay with the watch. They make it easy to pay. Kind of brilliant of them too, because they're sitting on all of our money. They're sitting on gift cards. They're sitting on our cash that we just, preload the cards. But when you think about why people like Starbucks, they never say it's because the coffee's so amazing. Like, the product is never, ever, ever number one. It's always convenience, consistency, and just ease of use, how it fits into our lives. And so when I think about the product, when we get into B2B environments, everyone's just throwing up product vomit everywhere. I mean, it is just like an epidemic, and it's something I'm really passionate about. So I appreciate you guys letting me come on the show and talk about it, because I think it's the number one way where we can differentiate ourselves when we're communicating our value to our prospects. And so the first kind of big chunk I want to tackle with you both is selling to what I call program selling versus product selling. And so in a B2B environment, when you think about program selling, I mean, we can riff on some of these, but how often are you talking to your clients about your warranty or your tech support or your quick ship programs? Or, hey, we have an e-commerce platform. You can buy, any time of day. You don't need to wait for, the fax machine to receive it or someone to manually input your PO. Kind of shifting the mindset to talking about how you support your prospect or your clients as a partner versus here's all the things our product does.
Yeah. It's great. And I use this for decades, actually. Back in the day when I was running companies, what we would do, one of the things that was one of the companies we did would support retailers as they expanded. And one of the reasons we were able to help so many retailers expand is, as an organization having multiple facilities around the company or country, I could say, we'll deliver a new store of products to you anywhere in the United States in 48 hours. You just tell us when they're going. We don't care how many you're going to do. We will have them. And for us, it was easy to do because we were doing the standard products, went out for a store, boom. But that was a program that we had. The products were the products, right? They were the products they got, they used good. You talk about value, quality, all that junk. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about supporting their desire to expand rapidly anywhere in the US. And that's what they said. And we said, in 48 hours, we will have your product at your door anywhere. And nobody else could do it.
I have a client I'm working with right now, and they're in an industry with really long lead times.
Yep.
They have stocked goods. So we're talking, when we're talking about serviceability, quick ship, we can get it to you anywhere. Other things that you could consider for, program benefits might be a single point of contact. Who do you call when you need help? Or what do your service plans look like? So everyone out here has the ability to package a program value pitch as opposed to just product features. So those are just some of the examples that I could think of in this category. Anything else you'd want to add there that I missed?
Couple comments real quick, Damon, if you want to grab those.
Yep. First of all, I don't know what this. I too like the convenience they provide when I need a coffee on the fly, talking about Starbucks. And then they said before that too, evolve or dissolve. That's just the way it is. And then we have Bob Woods stepping in here and saying product vomit. Too many do this without building value around what their products do. And yes, Bob, that's what I've talked about for many years is oftentimes your best value to your customer is not the product itself, but it's everything around it. Because I used to sell an injection molding too, right? Plastic parts. Anybody can make a plastic part, right? But what do you sell? You sell, we were running 24/7. We have an extremely low defect rate. You know, all these kind of things. We're close to your facility. Just these kind of things that you can do that really benefit your customer in these competitive places. Like we're talking in manufacturing. If you're in contract manufacturing, there's tens of thousands of CNC machining places, metal fabrication, all that kind of stuff across the United States. How do you differentiate yourself from? It's not because you're the best metal bender in the world. I'll tell you that.
Right.
Well, I think like the program approach is like the foundation. And once you kind of get clarity on the program approach, this is really where we start to look at your client's business model and how we're still not thinking about product yet, but we can start thinking about how some of those features either make your client money or save your client money. And there's so many things that, you know, we've all experienced and we're probably guilty of. And what's unfortunate is that when someone starts product vomiting on you, it's usually not for a lack of compassion for the business, compassion for your company, knowledge and expertise, industry expertise. It's just a matter of like getting in this autopilot mode and spinning your wheels instead of just taking the time to stop and listen. I was at a trade show. This was just a couple of days ago, Wednesday. And I have a client who's looking at maybe rolling out like 300 TVs or kiosks around his different retail locations. And there were a lot of vendors there that had this on display. So I walk in the booth and said, tell me more about this. And the guy starts talking about resolution and processor speed. And I said, can I just like stop you? And I said, really, I want to know, what does it cost? How does the content get loaded on there? If I have 3 different locations, do you drop ship it and we program each different content for different retail locations? And they were just at a loss. I kind of felt bad for them. At one point, I was like, is there a sales manager on the floor I could talk to? Because all they knew how to do was talk about the processor and the resolution. And that's important eventually, but I don't even know if it's fit for the business yet. And I think that people miss this first part, and is the most important part.
It's got to be a fit for the, like you said, either make you more money or save you money to make that decision easy for the customer. And that comes from things around the product.
Yeah.
Right. If they would have given an example and said, yeah, we have a similar case study where we have 10 locations and this kiosk just cycles frequently asked questions. So the people in line can watch the FAQs and then the salesperson doesn't waste time when they get to checkout. Oh, now I have a story I can remember and go tell it to my client. I don't care about resolution yet because it doesn't matter yet. So I think that's the disconnect, is just bridging that gap and making sure that we're covering that.
Yeah, I love that. So we had a guest a couple weeks ago, Damon, our dear friend John from Apparel Redefined. He's a manufacturer of printed clothing, embroidery, that type of thing. You know, wonderful company in Chicago, 60 employees. And he's like, you know what I sell? Memories. I sell the T-shirt that the 12-year-old won the Little League, championship, or the cancer walk that we dedicated to mom, or like he's the family gathering, hey, the Murray's blah 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 anniversary party, blah blah, so it's like when you focus on, as you're saying, like the solution, what you're giving to the gift that you're giving to your client, as opposed to just those features. Sarah, let's take it a little bit further. So I don't know if you're ready for this. I think you were sharing with us that you have 4 steps. Are we there yet? Are we ready for?
Before we get into because I think the 4 steps is the how to execute. I want to give one more example, and we can layer it a couple times. One of the products I used to sell, and it's just an easy example, so I use it a lot. I used to sell fire pits, and there was an OEM component in the fire pit, the burner kit, right? It could burn natural gas or propane. And then I sold the completed beautiful fire pit. And what would happen is customers would come up and they'd ask, what's the material? How hot does it get? What's the fuel type? Blah, blah, we just get in this back and forth conversation about the product. But they would never remember that it's, 30,000 BTUs. Like, that doesn't matter yet. It matters once we learn where it's going to be. Are you in Wisconsin or are you in Miami? Like, what do you need? But from that OEM component of that burner kit, if that OEM person came to us and said, hey, we have this one thing, it burns 2 different fuel sources. This is important because your clients will now get the power of choice. If they don't have a plumbed gas line, that's okay. They can still have the same SKU, which makes it easier on you to fulfill your orders because it's built into the same unit. If they need to clear the pool deck, if they entertain a lot, this thing can be moved because there's no plumbed gas line. So there was a lot of things. Oh, by the way, it's XYZ type of stainless steel, and that means it won't rust. So you can sell it to your coastal hotels. You can sell in a coastal environment, like kind of starting to bridge those pieces between the product features and then why I care about it and how it helps my business.
Right.
And so once I had the completed fire pit, I would tell a hotel owner, Mr. Owner, this is going to be a marketable amenity feature. You're going to be able to advertise it on your website. It's going to be a place for guests to gather. Speaking of community, people are going to hang out at the fire pit. Oh, and now we can start to use this as a way to overcome objections. Yeah, that fuel cost, don't worry about it. It's about X dollars an hour, but you're going to pay for that in the first round of drinks when people sit around this fire pit and stay on your hotel because they're buying booze around your fire pit. Like just kind of giving the vision helps them essentially sell on your behalf if you're not in the room. And in B2B environments, we all know this. We usually don't always have a seat at the table with the decision maker. So you need to use everything in your arsenal, whether it's program selling or more storytelling and product benefits to help equip that person to sell when we don't have a seat at the table.
Man, that was so good, man. Sarah, drop the mic right there, man. You are absolutely on fire. Pun intended. So I'm going to throw in on top of it. Let me throw my SEO hat on for a second, because so now on Shark Tank, Barbara Cochran always says these, save me money, make me prettier, and I'll invest in your company. Save me money, make me prettier. And so the thing is, I love what you're saying, Sarah, for the B2B space, make me money, save me money. And then in that consumer space, hey, make me prettier, make my deck prettier, or, a movie that I can watch with my family tonight, whatever that, our friend John selling memories, like selling that better experience. Damon, I'm going to go there for a second. So Sarah, a little pop quiz. You coffee drinker, right? We're talking about Starbucks, talking about coffee. Have you ever, that little cardboard thing that goes around the cup? You know what I'm talking about?
Coffee collar?
The coffee. I've never heard that term, the coffee collar. You know what it's called?
No.
You're calling it coffee. There's an actual term for it. Do you know what that term is, Damon? You remember what the term is?
I've heard it before.
It is called a zarf. Z-A-R-F, zarf. The guy that founded it, I wish to goodness gracious it was me that founded it. Jay Sorensen founded it in 1991, made $1 gazillion selling a fraction of a penny piece of cardboard. He called it the Java jacket.
Oh.
So my point is to what you're saying is so often in the B2B space, we're so close. If I was like, hey, Sarah, we're going to make these little coffee collar things, blah, 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 and we're going to call them a zarf. And all of our customers know that they're a zarf. So when they go to Google it, they're going to Google zarf. And you're going to, Kurt, there's nobody on the planet that knows the word zarf. They're thinking, I don't want to burn my fingers today. But as owners, we're thinking Java jacket. We're thinking zarf. So I love what you're saying, because we're so focused on the BTUs and all the product features. All the customers thinking, I just don't want to burn my fingers. I have my brother-in-law is coming over who drives me crazy. I'm going to impress him with my new fire pit. This is what they're thinking. And so from an SEO standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, I love the direction you're going.
Yeah.
Keep it going, please.
Well, and I think you made a really good point too, Kurt, on the naming convention and like make it easier, make it make me money, save me money, make me pretty. I used to call it make me money, save me money, make it easy. And that's where we talk about drop shipping, single point of contact. That's where some of those program messaging. But this is all good to sit with it and brains dump and put together your package. But you need your teammates to be able to effectively communicate it too. And so that might be a good segue, Kirk, into these 4 steps where I suggest you brain dump every product feature that you can think of, or excuse me, every program feature. So we just listed off a ton on this episode. If you want to rewatch, warranty, drop shipping, website, single point of contact, quick ship, in stock, service plans, etc. Like drop all those in, because your competitors probably aren't having those same conversations up front. That might be at the end, but one of the ways you differentiate is you bring this up earlier on in the conversation. So that's step 1, is just brain dump all those program benefits you can think of. Then step 2 would be, now you can kind of lay out your product features like the resolution, like the processor, like the, fuel type for the fire pit burner. But you need to take it one step further and be like, why does anyone care about this? Why does having 7 different resolutions in one thing, like, who cares about this? Why would somebody care? Why is it important to them? So I think that's that's the piece people miss is, sure, you have all these different features, but why would anyone care?
Mhm.
And then the third step is to think about all the different people who are going to interact with the product, and make sure if you're an OEM component supplier, you're thinking about the end user. So maybe you're selling the burner kit for the fire pit, not the whole fire pit, but that homeowner who's going to interact with that fire pit, they, sometimes they're not always the decision maker. Like in a hotel environment, the guest didn't pick that fire pit for that pool deck, but they're still going to interact with it. So lay out all your different stakeholders. Who's the decision maker? Who's the procurement person? Who specifies it? Who are your partners that you're going to build it together? Who's the end user going to use it? And then I would almost recommend you just lay it out almost in like column format, and then start to match which product features these people care about. And you'll start to find some themes, because the owner is going to care about something much different than the procurement guy. He might care a lot more about drop shipping or flat rate shipping versus the end user. But then what I would recommend in your marketing, your SEO, your communications with your clients, just make it very literal. Like, why does this matter to you, Mr. Client? Why does this matter to you, prospect? How is this going to impact your business model? And just make it very literal. But now you have different pivot points so you can navigate those conversations with whoever you do have a seat at the audience with. And then you're giving them tools to go sell it on your behalf when you're not in the room. So that's kind of the 4, I'll repeat the 4 steps: brain dump all the product program benefits, then lay out the product features, and then dial in, why does anyone care about these product features? Then think of your different stakeholders who interact with your product or service, and then match them into each appropriate column. Who cares about what?
Yeah. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, Sarah. And one thing, Damon, that you and I love to preach, and what Sarah's just completely elegantly laying out, Sarah, we use a line called, like, how do you out teach the competition? And what you just, I'm taking notes like furiously right now. And what you just laid out is just like really breaking it down, and like, how are you educating each, different stakeholders, different targets, different personas, right through the entire process. And I love the most, and I'd love for you to dig in a little bit deeper about the why somebody cares. Okay. So say, our friends out there that are listening, they're like, okay, man, Sarah, I'm really digging this. How do we reach that person, or how do we really know that we're portraying the right information for to answer that why? Does that make sense? That question makes sense?
Yes. And I will tell you a Trojan horse I use all the time in my business for my clients. So some of the things that I will do with the clients that I work with is go through all these messaging, but we need to make sure that the messaging resonates. And does this matter to the people that we think it matters? So it is totally okay to ask people to look at what you're building and give feedback on it. And this is so powerful for many reasons. Number one, you're respecting their business model. I used to sell to architects. I am not an architect. You think about the like the healthcare industry. You're selling to a doctor as a pharmaceutical rep. You are not a doctor. So it's incorrect to assume you know everything about architecture. So if you're able to really pivot it and say, hey, I'm building out this messaging and these program benefits specific to architects, or specific to procurement suppliers, or specific to linemen on the assembly line, like whoever that stakeholder is, would you be so kind to give me some feedback to see if I'm on track? And then sometimes the stuff doesn't resonate. They're like, we actually don't care about this. Or once we start to realize it, we're starting to realize people do care about it. LED lighting, for example, a lighting designer and architect didn't care about the serviceability at the beginning, but now LEDs have been in the market a long time. They're nearing end of life. And then these lighting designers are getting calls saying, hey, you spec'd a product that's failing. So now the serviceability does matter to them, but you don't know unless you start to ask. And the more you ask and learn from the different stakeholders you work with, you're going to be more empowered to communicate to them better. B, they're going to most of the time be appreciative that you took the time to care. And then C, it kind of serves as a Trojan horse to say, hey, tell me more about your solution. We might need it on this blah, blah, blah application we're working on. So it's a really nice way to build out your messaging, but also approach it from a non-salesy, let me do a product deck and vomit all over you, because that's what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to add, for friends out there, man, I hope, this is a masterclass. This is just phenomenal. And Sarah, I just want to give you a little shout out. Last time you were on the show, you gave like a whole jam session on like how to prep for a trade show. I was actually going to a trade show like 3 weeks later. I took furious notes, and like the advice you gave me was absolutely priceless. As a matter of fact, I probably owe you lunch, dinner, or I owe you something. But so again, like this information is priceless. What I'd love to dig in, we've got some more time. What I'd love to dig in a little bit further. How about some tips, advice? So say maybe somebody's out there. I love the Trojan horse. I'd love for you to explain Trojan horse a little further. So I'm hitting you with 2 questions.
Sure.
Trojan horse a little further. Number 1. Number 2, say there's a small company, small manufacturer, a little bit introverted. Maybe they have a small number of clients, but they're like, man, how do I reach out to my client? How do I get information? They're a lot more giving with information than you realize. But so talk about the Trojan horse, please. Just explain I love that line.
Yeah.
And then take it a little bit further. What are some tips, strategies, and how can we retract that helpful information from our ideal customers to target other customers?
Perfect. Well, I'm not a history buff, so I feel like Damon might actually know the actual story of the Trojan horse thing. I think it was the Greeks. I want to like butcher it all.
Something like that.
They needed the soldiers to get into a palace or something.
Yep.
And so they built this wooden horse as a gift. And then all the soldiers were hidden inside.
Yes.
So if you can find different vehicles to connect with your client, and I know Bob Woods from Social Sales Link is on here. Hi, Bob. I learned a lot of stuff from the Social Sales Link team too on the way to do this digitally. So I'd recommend you check out their platform too, because it's a lot of how can you add value to other people? That's the biggest thing, is adding value. And so then the Trojan horse comes in where, hey, I'm putting together this panel discussion for an industry event, and I can't get in with this person I really want to get into. They never respond to my emails. They never want to take my meetings. They ignore all my requests for projects. Well, I'm going to put together this panel discussion, and I need an expert in this category. Hey, so-and-so, would you consider being my panel expert on this event that I'm putting together? You get emails so much faster because I'm helping them in their business model. In this case, I'm elevating them from a standpoint in the way that I can. This isn't a fit for everyone, but you just have to start thinking about how are you adding value to different people. And that could be getting their expertise and then promoting it on your platforms or your areas. So if you're a small manufacturing client, just like you're saying, Kurt, maybe look at what was a project that went really well. And can your client potentially provide a case study? And in that case study, and one of the ways to do this is sometimes we have people who ask for discounts or something special, or we go above and beyond. And when I was building my business, I had opportunities to speak, but they were at no charge. They were free speaking events. I didn't do anything for free. I said, well, my company will sponsor 100% of this in exchange for I want to use you as a case study. Is that okay? And almost everyone says yes. So there's ways you can start to be creative by getting this marketing information.
Yeah.
And then I would have them use that as like, hey, this is a similar end user client as yours. Here's the way that we partnered with them, and here's the results. Would this be of value to you to learn more? So you just have to start thinking of creative ways to add value. And if you could keep the business model lens on it, what does that person care about to help their business? It becomes a lot easier to ask for stuff. And that's kind of where you start to get this circle and like cycle of reciprocity.
Right. Yeah.
That answer's a little all over the place.
No, that was
That's awesome though. It's awesome. I mean, because you're talking about, how you really thinking about adding value to the people you're trying to build relationships with. It's always a great way. I mean, Kurt and I talk about a lot when we're talking with people about live streaming, because listen, that's one of the ways that he and I can add value to people is to help their message get out through live streaming. And it really, like you're saying, a panel discussion, helping on a study of some sort, there's tons of ways that you can help people in your industry, people in your community that you want to connect with, get further their ambitions.
Yeah.
And
Go through that process. I think what Sarah's dropping here is like just pure gold. And if
yes,
this is a different or unique concept, like Sarah, I know you do podcasting. We're friends through our mutual buddy, Tony, who does podcasting. Damon, we have our live stream show. What a great way to reach out to that decision maker that you can't crack the code, can't get a foot in the door with what Sarah's saying. Hey, I'm doing this thing, or I have a panel, or I have a situation that I need subject matter expertise. And guess what? You're the smartest person in the room. I would love to have you participate. It's such a different ask than like, hey, will you buy my product?
Right. I'm building an ebook. I'm putting together a webinar and we'd love to include a quote from you. Can I interview you for 15 minutes? I mean, there's so many ways to like pull this thread. And I think it's the way to stand out from the noise too, because
everyone wants, hey, you got 15 minutes for me to product vomit on you? Hey, you got 15 minutes? I can do it in 5 minutes. I can product vomit for 5 minutes, maybe. That's not much of an approach.
Yeah.
And everyone's doing it. So it's like, just stop puking on people and you can differentiate yourself.
Yep.
That's right. Hey, Damon,
we got a couple comments. Bob drops, hey, perfection, Sarah. He says that. And then someone else said, love the tips, Sarah. Very insightful. Lots of valuable takeaways that are easy to implement right away. I agree 100% here. So it's the getting away from and like you said, too, these are things that actually help you, help them, and then get those relationships started. And you will stand out because you're not just throwing the product vomit out there.
Yeah. Couple more comments here.
Oh, man.
Frank,
product vomit. Love that. And then this is good. No show up and throw up. I like that.
Good one. I've also heard of the term pitch slapping.
Yep. Pitch slapping. Right. Yeah, pitch slapping. And Bob says anyone can ask for someone to buy. The effective salesperson asks for knowledge.
Wow. Man, that's gold right there.
Anyone can ask for someone to buy. The effective salesperson asks for knowledge. Ooh, that one you got to think about it.
Yeah.
But
you know, it's kind of funny. Once you ask for that knowledge, like I worked with an architect and they unintentionally approved a thermostat that wasn't mine. And I didn't know the process for once something was approved. What do you do? So I just said, hey, I haven't encountered this before. Can you walk me through the steps? And so she did. And then afterwards I said, okay, so is there anything you need for me to implement that process? And then I was able to ask for them to switch it over to my product. But it came from a lot different approach of me fact gathering and wanting to understand it more so I can better service other people in the community in that same field. And everyone, I think, is happy to help if there's reciprocity. I think as a general rule, people want to help each other because it helps the industry grow. It helps people evolve. It's like, I think it's the best part about business is it gives you a creative vehicle for human to human interaction.
Right. Yeah. Takeaways, being that go-giver, being, we've talked about fierce educating and just, going, just really dedicating yourself to, building the relationship. We've talked about community, all those things. A couple more comments here, Dave.
Yeah.
Mark
drops it. Or as Larry Levine asks, are you a salesperson or a sales professional? And that's a great question to be asking because that is very relevant. Bob, I think they'll make that into a t-shirt. I did have to write that down. That no show up and throw up. I mean, I'm going to have to use that. I'm sorry. Yeah. We'll see who put that in there.
It's Friday. We ate a lot of candy. It's cool to talk about.
That is awesome.
So, Sarah, as we start winding down, what are some other parting thoughts, words of wisdom that you want to share in that B2B space as you're just dropping all sorts of amazing tips and strategies for folks. One thing I want to add is first off, stop by Sarah's website because she has tons of information, tons of education. She does workshops, webinars, you name it. She does it. Prospecting on purpose. She does it all. She's one of the funniest human beings that I've ever met. She's just such a dear friend. We love having her on. Sarah, what are some parting thoughts, words of wisdom that you'd love to share with folks today?
Yeah, no, I'm so appreciative of the two of you. I like your friendship. I love that you support my business too. You have all these emotional bank account deposits with me, so I'll do anything for you. That's kind of how it works. But I think the biggest takeaway is I call it in my workshops, it's an acronym that stands for ABAV, always be adding value. And I think this is what separates the varsity team from everyone else. Is any situation you approach, you're thinking, how can I add value to that person? And it's not this particular prospect. It's any person you interact with. Hey, this person's holding a bunch of stuff. Let me open the door for them, right? Like it's every time. It just has to be ingrained in how you approach the world, because there's been so many times, in my professional career where I meet someone and they have a business that has nothing to do with what I do. They would never be a potential client, but I say, hey, there's this other company I saw and they do something similar. And this was a kind of creative way. Would you be open to me sharing how they ran that? Like, just find these different ways to add value wherever you go, because it always comes back tenfold. And if you come from this place of like service and always adding value, then it's a lot easier to ask for things when you need help. And so you're not doing it, sneakily, like one day and 3 years from now, I'm going to need to call you for a favor. You're doing it because that's just part of your mindset and how you show up in the world. And that's really what differentiates varsity team versus everyone else.
That's your MO. And I'm sorry to do this. You shared a wonderful story last time you were on. If I'm not mistaken, there was a receptionist and you started chit-chatting with her. Do I have this right? And was it a book? Or you were talking?
Oh yeah. We talk all about adding value. We also talk about the importance of listening a lot.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite podcast episodes I've ever done. It's a big chunk of my training because I asked for feedback and all these people were talking about this one slide I had on listening was so valuable to them. So now it's like a 7-minute part of my keynote is this concept of listening. But we leave a lot of money on the table if we're not listening. And the way that we start is having the mindset of ABAV, always be adding value. When you're active listening, this is where you can start to take withdrawals from the bank. So this was pre-pandemic days, but I was cold calling architecture firms, and most architecture firms, their vendor presentations are booked out a year in Los Angeles. It's big. Everyone's trying to get into these big firms. And so I walk in and I ask the receptionist, excuse me, who does your lunch and learn? I do. But we're booked out a year. No problem. I'll send you my information. I'll see you next year. She says, well, it may be a minute before I get back to you. I'm out of the office next week. And I'm listening and I said, oh, are you going anywhere fun? She says, I'm going to Hawaii with my husband. It's our first time in Hawaii. So later that night, I send her my lunch and learn description. And then I sent her a separate email and I just said, hey, I don't know if you're a reader, but here's 2 books that are historical fiction that take place in Hawaii. You might like them. And I got an email back from her that night. And I was on the lunch and learn calendar 2 months from that day versus 12 months. So I got an extra 10 months of sales potential just because I asked her if she was going anywhere fun and I sent her something. It doesn't have to cost any money. I think that's the biggest thing is it doesn't have to cost money. Just be a real human and always be adding value. And then you start to reap the results.
Gold. Absolutely gold, man. Just all right, Sarah, drop the mic. Absolutely love it. Damon, we've got one more comment.
Yeah, we do. It's someone that asked, sorry, I missed this part. What's the name of your podcast, Sarah? So
it's called Prospecting on Purpose. We just did episode 97, and the guest is the general manager of the Yamava Casino. They welcome 14 million guests every year, second only to Disneyland. And he and I spoke about how to create great company culture. So there's guest episodes, there's solo episodes, but yeah, we're on the countdown to 100, Prospecting on Purpose.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, I want to give a huge shout out, big thank you to you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And so, man, and how about everybody in the chat box today, Damon? Just, totally appreciate the comments.
That was so great.
And you've been hanging out with us for however long we've been chatting. So how about a big round of applause for the one, the only, our dear esteemed friend here, Sara Murray, for just absolutely crushing it today. Masterclass on how building relationships, really prospecting on purpose, and just taking your business to the varsity level. That is a great line.
Yes.
Damon, why don't you take it away, man?
I will do that. I want to say one thing. I've got a couple more comments here. We got Mark Bregman. He said, make admins your advocate. They are not the enemy. Now, I'm going to tell you that is gold as well, because, and Sarah, you had a great example of just being human with people. I can't tell you in your experience hearing that from you. My experience is just talk to them. I mean, so many times you see this, a salesperson goes into a big company and they're going to sit down, and they go sit down and they do their thing. How much more can you learn if that person's not jamming on the phone and the other side, just asking about what's going on? What do you like about working here? What's happening today? Fun. And just talk to people and get to know them, because like you said, it bought you 10 months on the schedule.
Yeah. Just be real, be memorable. I did all my Zoom calls yesterday in my Blockbuster uniform. No shame. Not with small people either. I'm like, yeah.
Now, Sarah, when you did you have the gas handle, by the way? Did you have the gas handle with you on the calls
that should be my next prop.
Yeah. Yes. And then too, another comment, Bob said he was on your podcast earlier this year and it was a great one. And someone else said, I don't know if it's Kyla. I was looking at the other comments before. Kyla and Mark Roach both left comments earlier and it didn't show us their names, but this was very informative. Thank you. And then Raul said, it was nice to meet all the new members. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. It was so fun always.
We are, oh God, Sarah, you're going to have to come back again. You know that we cannot not have you come back again, because it's so great every time you're on here, learning so much. Your experience in selling B2B and just the practical. We're not hearing go off and blah, 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 blah. It's like, this is how you do it, human and effective. Thank you.
Yeah. And I can speak firsthand, man. Her tips are absolutely priceless. Take them. If you miss anything, go back, hit the replay button, catch it over the weekend when you're out walking the dog, whatever you're doing, eating Halloween candy. But Damon, as we like to close out, just go out and be someone's inspiration, just like our dear friend Sarah was today. And you're all going to make the world a better place. So we will close out. And so, Damon, we'll be back here next week, I think.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. I want to thank everyone in the chat today. We had Mark and Bob and Raul and Usman and Kyla and Mark. And I already said Mark a couple times. 2 Marks actually today. That was, we got to make sure we get that right. But thanks so much for being here. And if you got in late, like we say, but today you really need to go back to the beginning and listen to what Sarah says, because if you want to understand some real practical tips to really helping your sales effectiveness go through the roof, do that. Also, check out Sarah's podcast, Prospecting on Purpose. She's dropping tons more great information there. Thanks, everyone, for being here with us today on the Manufacturing E-Commerce Success. We'll be back again next week. Have a great weekend.